Gentlemen, this meeting of the Haltom City Council is called to order. If you will, stand at this time for the invocation and pledge to be led by Councilmember Diane Branson.
Bow our heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all we've been given, for families and friends, and for this great country which allows us so many freedoms. Please watch over the servicemen and women at home and abroad and keep them in your care. Help us as we go forth this evening to bring our hearts together and have the wisdom to know and do what is right. Please help us maintain our focus and achieve our common goals while remembering the citizens of this great city whom we serve. In Jesus' name, amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we do welcome all of you here tonight to this council meeting. We have several items of business to be brought forth and some very important decisions to be made. And we thank you for your interest in Haltom City that causes you to be in our council chambers tonight, as well as those who are watching on HCTV. We have tonight 4 different presentations to make, the first of which, Claire Tyner, Executive Director of the Haltom City Housing Authority. Will you come forward at this time, please, and join me at the podium? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Claire Tyner. In the event you don't know who this lady is, she is Executive Director of the Haltom City Housing Authority, and she's accomplished something along with her staff and her directors that very few people at any point in life are able to accomplish. A federal agency gave her a 100% perfect grade when they evaluated the work she does down there, and in recognition of that, I want to present this certificate of accomplishment. And also, Ms. Tyner, if you'd like to address the audience here tonight, we'd be very happy for you to do so. This certificate of accomplishment is presented to Claire Tyner, Executive Director of the Housing Authority of the City of Haltom City. Whereas, under the leadership of Executive Director Tyner, the Housing Authority of the City of Haltom City has received a perfect score of 100 in the annual evaluation by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. And whereas the Housing Authority of the City of Haltom City is the only housing authority in this entire region to receive this highest possible rating, and whereas the Real Estate Assessment Center of HUD assessed the Housing Authority of the City of Haltom City for the fiscal year 2002, and whereas the Public Housing Assessment System score is performed annually and is graded on 4 criteria: physical, financial, management, and resident. Now therefore, I, Calvin White, Mayor of the City of Haltom City, on behalf of the City Council and all of our citizens, wish to present this certificate of accomplishment to Claire Tyner, her staff, and the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners in recognition of their outstanding accomplishment in receiving a perfect score, and we wish them continued success. Ms. Tyner?
Thank you. I didn't come prepared to speak at all, but thank you for the acknowledgement here. And there's 5 employees down there, and I can't do it all by myself. I have 3 maintenance and myself and another lady in the office, and without their help I couldn't get this 100%. And I just would like anybody to come down and take a look, drive around. We're off of Carson Street, and see for yourselves what our property looks like. I think it looks pretty nice. Thank you.
If you will remain at that position just a moment. Members of the council, any comments? I don't, yeah, there it is. Yeah. John?
Ms. Tyner, I'm very proud that y'all have that. I had the opportunity to be liaison to y'all's board down there for a couple of years, and that board works very hard with you, and your staff works very hard. And a lot of people don't know where this is at. It's down off Carson Street, and it's down by South Birdville Elementary School. And if you ever get a chance to go down there and drive through there, this lady has her tenants keep their property up. It's a well-maintained, it's a well-put-together organization, and my hat's off for you, and keep up the good work down there.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your award.
Thank you. Thank you for being there for when we needed you also.
Ms. Tyner has just got back from vacation, so if she has that relaxed,
Yeah.
faraway look, it's because she's enjoyed the last few days off. And,
It's been real nice.
we appreciate the outstanding work you and your staff.
Thank you, and
the
I
Board of
hope we can
Commissioners
keep it
do.
up. Thank you.
We move on now to the second presentation to be made. Our Senior Advisory Board, the chair of that board is here tonight, Ms. Fran Nally. Fran, if you'll come forward, and will Ms. Black be helping you with the presentation, or will you? Okay. This is Roxy Black and Fran Nally, who do a lot of great things with our Senior Advisory Board. So, ladies.
Well, the reason we're meeting here tonight with everyone is because a lot of people still don't know that there is a senior advisory program out there, or committee. I myself, Fran Nally, I'm the chair. Roxy Black is my co-chair. And then at large, we also have Shirley Hester and Mary Ruth Ornsby. We all work together, and this committee was formed to give senior citizens a voice to the city council and staff pertaining to issues that may affect them. Input is encouraged not only from Haltom City senior citizens, but includes anyone that actively takes part at the senior center, as well as citizens in the community. Few things that we are working on at present, just so people will know, is curb addresses. A lot of people do not know that this is something that the city does, is put your address on the curb. It is for emergency services. So if you call 911, they need to send an ambulance, they can find you. Vans for the seniors. We're also working on that program. Checking smoke detectors by the fire department. And the Are You OK program that has a lot of problems. We're working on that. Hopefully, we can get some conclusions on that. We also, along with the Haltom Senior Center, we have formed a partnership in a program that is when someone in Haltom City...
Community Caring Program.
It's called the Community Caring Program. And when anyone passes away in Haltom City, we take a cake and also a card, a sympathy card out to them. One person from the center goes and one of us goes, one of the committee goes.
And we have carried quite a few here recently also.
And
We've lost a lot of our senior citizens.
also, it's not just for complaints or concerns. We also would like input on good things that we can pass on. We have our meetings every other month. So we at the senior center, and we do post it down here so everyone knows when the next meeting is. It is an open meeting, and it's just a friendly meeting. So we would like for everyone to come and let us know your concerns, your glads, your whatever, your worries, because that's what we're here for. This is a new committee that's only been in operation since April, and we want to do all the good that we can. So we thank you very much.
Ladies, if you will, remain for just a moment. Members of the council may have questions or comments. While I'm waiting for the lights to come on, I want to express my appreciation to you. Our seniors are a very valuable part of our community, and I always look forward to being at the center to just be a part of the electricity that's in the air of all the good things that happens there. And for what the two of you and your committee on the Senior Advisory Committee, for the work you all put in, for all the issues you look at, for the ways you try to find to bring services and the issues that face senior citizens to the forefront so we're knowledgeable of them. we thank you from the bottom of our heart.
And thank everyone here for all their assistance when I make those phone calls to you saying, hey, we want to thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
Thank you. I want to thank Miss Nally and Miss Black for the work they do down there, not only with the Senior Advisory Committee, but all the work that y'all do down there at the center, and also Bobby Arthur, the director of that works very closely with y'all. And I'm very excited about the program. I'm very excited about the enthusiasm y'all had. I've made a few of your meetings, and just want to let you know if there's anything that this council can do, feel free to contact us, and we're here for you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we do want to encourage our seniors who may be watching this council meeting and watching your presentation. If they have issues or concerns, be sure to contact you, because that's what this committee is for.
Right.
To
Right.
understand and to find ways to address the concerns of the
We
seniors
will do
in our
what we
community.
can to help them out.
You can, I believe our numbers are now in your directories. So since we're not always at the center, I guess 90% of my time, but if not, they can call me at home, and that's fine.
Or they can call me, and I think mine is listed also.
I
I'm not
believe
for
so.
sure.
Okay. Councilmember Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could, since Ms. Nally and Ms. Black are both here, something that y'all might consider putting on the agenda would be the ambulance. We have the flat ambulance rate, and I don't know if that's, something we've talked about during this budget session quite a bit, but that may be something, if y'all wouldn't mind making we really need to make our seniors and really every citizen more aware of the $55 flat rate for ambulance service. And then also, hopefully, the rec renovations, or the senior renovations, hopefully all that project will go well. So
Yeah, they were supposed to start this month over there, but they haven't made it yet, so.
still have a little bit left.
They've already been down and taken some of the specs.
I did want to also mention for a lot, like Roxy didn't know till I told her, just for your information, Tarrant County will not have an election on November the 4th. The election is going to be September the 13th. So everyone needs to be aware of that. The reason I know this, I got my judge papers in the mail. So I just wanted to pass it on. And of course, there is propositions. There is one specifically. I'm not, of course, telling you either way to vote. I'm just advising you that there is a proposition on there concerning seniors, taxes, whatever. So please make note. The election will be September the 13th, not November the 4th. There will be none in Tarrant County.
Thank you, ladies. We appreciate you being here. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Our next presentation tonight on the agenda is from the Keep Texas Beautiful, some of the awards that have recently been earned by that group. And I think, Fran Burns, you're going to come forward at this time and tell us about some of the awards that this board has earned.
Thank you, Mayor. It was supposed to be Betty Porter, but we've worked her to death in the last few days. We had a board meeting last Monday night that went till after 10 o'clock, and we had a workshop on Saturday that went for about 3.5 hours, and I think she probably just skipped town, so she wouldn't have to be with us tonight. But I know she would have been here. She's probably just forgotten, so I'm happy to present these awards in her absence. And I've been involved with Keep Haltom City Beautiful since 1988. And we enter the Governor's Community Achievement Award, Haltom City does every year, basically because the award system gives us a very good blueprint to follow to improve the community. And there's 7 different areas that we have to address and do projects in, including beautification, cleanup, law enforcement, public awareness, and things like that. And then we turn in our application in May to the state, and they go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And the reason they're so careful is because there's $1 million worth of prize money or landscaping funds available to the winning communities. There's 9 different communities that win a portion of this $1 million. And in our population category, it's $95,000. So that's a good incentive to go for this award. And it, as I say, it does improve the community while you're trying to do all these things. This year we came in third in our category. We were beat out by Lake Jackson and Pearland. But we did, at convention, receive some recognition, and one of them was a third place award. And we'll put this in the trophy case to let everybody know that we did win. And we also earned an award for sustained excellence. We scored over 90 points for 3 years in a row. So, and I don't, unless you filled out one of these applications, you really can't appreciate what that means. But I did want to tell you that and present these awards to you. And then this year we were presented with a flag for being an affiliate in good standing. So I hope that we can fly this somewhere around the municipal complexes, and there you go. So we'll continue to work hard and improve our community through Keep Texas Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burns, for that presentation. Members of the council, any comments regarding the Beautification Board and this Keep Texas Beautiful awards that have been brought forth? If you don't mind, Ms. Burns, remain at the podium. Councilmember Williams.
I'm not going to talk on that, just only the agenda items I know of. I appreciate the work that the Beautification Board does. I had the opportunity to work with the board, and had the opportunity to be at the award luncheon when we were awarded these awards. And I would like to ask if David Siriano, the man behind the camera that we never see, if maybe at the next time that he airs this, have a close-up on those and dub those in where the people can see. They're very nice awards. They're worked for very hard. And I just want to thank the Beautification Board and everybody on staff that's involved in that and the dedication of their willingness to make Haltom City a better place to live. Thank you, Fran, for being dedicated.
Thank you. Okay.
Members of the council, any further comment? Thank you, Ms. Burns. We come now to the annual library writing contest winners. The announcement of those to be made by Leslie Smith, Assistant Library Director.
Well, as you know, there's a test after each one of these handouts. So read them carefully. I'm here to announce our third annual writing contest. We had almost 200 entries this year, so we're very, very proud of that. Before I list the winners and the co-winners, I'd like to do some recognition, please, first. First off would be the Friends of the Public Library, who have so generously supported this for 3 years running. Without their help, of course, we could not be doing this. And then secondly, I'd like to name our judges. There's 4 judges: Betty Biles, Betty Carica, Betty Dolan, and Mary Spencer, a.k.a. Ben the Bear. I don't know how Mary got in there. She didn't have a Betty name, but we let her in anyways. I'd also like to tell you that I've handed out, or I've left in the hallway, some of these flyers. So if anyone's interested in seeing the names of the winners, you can pick some up as you leave. Now on to the winners. There's 3 categories: short story, essay, and poetry. The first will be short story. Division 1st through 3rd grade, the winner is Madison Gonzalez, and she's from Watauga. Division 4th through 6th grades, the winner, Mary A. Gomez, and she's from Bedford. Division 7th through 12th grade, the winner, Caleb Quinones. And then there's an honorable mention, Caleb Quinones, for 7th through 12th grade. And in the adult division, and Caleb is also from Haltom City, I'm sorry. And then in the adult category is the winner, Ginger Cooper, and she's from Fort Worth. In the essay category, the 4th through 6th grade co-winner is Philip Russell Overpeck. He's from Hearst. The other co-winner is Jessica Quinones, Haltom City. And no, the ballot was not rigged, just because both of the Quinones kids, won. What was that? What were you saying? I heard you. Okay. This is my time. Okay. Thank you, John. In the division of 7th through 12th grade, the winner is Brittany Long, Haltom City. The Division of Adult, again, still in essay. The winner is William Lanningham, and he's from Seabrook, Texas. Last but not least is the poetry category. Division 1st through 3rd grade is the winner Francesca Escapita. She's from Haltom City. Division 4th through 6th grade winner is Mai Chi Lam, and she's from Euless. Division 7th through 12th grades, the winner is Kaylin Powell, and she's from Austin. Division Adult is Ruth Hudson Savage, and she's from Arlington. And then we have 3 honorable mentions in the adult category poetry. Johnny Dillard from Haltom City, Carol Worley from Haltom City, and Catherine Lanningham Miller from Corpus Christi. If you know any of these winners, please give them an attaboy when you see them. We're very proud. And again, we're very, very happy to be doing this. This was the 3rd, and we will be having the 4th. And by the way, I did not see any of your names on the entries, on the submissions this year. Why is that? Don't you know how to read? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate this report. Any comments?
Dare you?
I just asked if we'd done the library's budget yet.
Okay, moving. Yes, Councilmember Sutton.
Well, when's the next one? When's the next contest start?
It's always, the deadline is always May 31st.
Okay, I mean, but when does it start? When can you start doing your entries? Now. Okay, great.
Okay, moving to the consent agenda, and I think everyone here is aware of what the consent agenda is. It's a listing of self-explanatory items that the council will act on in one motion, and approval of the consent agenda, which contains routine items, authorizes the city manager to move forward to implement them in accordance with the staff recommendations. If you have an agenda with you, we will take action under the consent on items 1, 2, and 3. Items 4 and 5 have been pulled for special attention, and we will address those at the appropriate time. Item number 4 will be addressed as soon as we finish with the consent agenda items, and then item number 5 will be placed after item number 7. So if you're keeping score, you'll know when that is coming. Councilmember Fowler has filed a conflict of interest affidavit on item number 2, so he will be abstaining. And just for the information of the people in the audience, when you see his vote coming, you'll know what that means. Councilmember Williams, are you ready for a motion regarding the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion we approve items 1 through 3, moving item 4 to the executive session to follow the end of the meeting. And number 5, we will move behind item number 7.
Councilmember Avery.
That's for a second, Mayor.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none. Councilmember Avery is. All right. You got the vote. I turned to the city secretary to ask if she had the vote. I've been flipping the lights on and off before she gets a chance always to get those noted, and I wanted to be sure to give her plenty of time to do that tonight. We come now to the Visitor Citizens Forum. Ms. Staub, do we have any cards filled out?
No, Mayor.
There being no cards filled out, we come to the announcement and events. Mr. Torres, I believe you have an announcement.
I do, Mayor. I'd like to announce that Friday morning at about 9 o'clock, there's a program entitled Commute Solutions. It's going to be held at the TRE station in Richland Hills at the Hanley-Eaterville exit and 121. This is a month-long program promoting clean air. This event's going to be hosted by the Texas Clean Air Coalition and the Quad Cities Foundation that we are part of. Basically, what's going to happen is there's going to be 2 trains, one from Fort Worth and one from Dallas, that are going to be leaving in the morning and converging somewhere in the Mid-Cities area. And they're going to be stopping along the way, and mayors are going to be there at each stop, and they're going to be reading proclamations on this subject matter. So we'd just like to invite everyone out there, if you have any interest in that, and take part in that good, worthy cause.
I believe our police chief has an announcement to make at this time regarding National Night Out coming up August the 5th. This very important program happens every year, and we're ready for that time of year.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to remind everyone watching television and remind everybody in the audience that National Night Out is Tuesday, August 5th. If you have an organized party, we would like to be a part of that. All of my staff will be out and about on that evening, and if you have an organized party and can call 222-7100 and let us know, we'd be happy to be a part of that. Also, if you don't have an organized party, it is a good night to get out and meet your neighbors. That's the point of the whole thing, is to get out, find out who you live next door to, get to know those folks so that they can watch out for you and you watch out for them. So Tuesday, August 5th, National Night Out, and we look forward to participating and coming out and meeting folks in the individual neighborhoods.
Would you take just a moment and explain, tell everybody how many Crime Watch we have in Haltom City, and maybe even if someone might be interested in setting one up, how they might go about doing that?
Again, they can contact me, 222-7100. There are about 20 organized crime watches in the city of Haltom City, and those crime watch captains know who they are. It's a very simple procedure to get started, and we can help you do that. If you want to be the volunteer to come forward and be a block captain, then we can get you started.
Kind of one of those programs where neighbors watch out for neighbors.
Exactly.
And keep crime down as a result of that.
That's correct.
Members of the council, any comments regarding National Night Out? I do want to encourage all of our citizens to attend and participate. This is a very worthwhile function, and we thank you and your staff and your volunteers for putting this on.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
Okay, Mayor. Am I going to be the last one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was going to arrange my stuff. First of all, I got an announcement. Don't trash your own phone book. Recycle it during Project Redirectory. Special bins will be located at the Fire Station 3, which is at the Water Tower at 820 and Haltom Road, August the 1st through September the 2nd. Phone books only, please. No plastic bags or trash. Also, electric fans are now available. Those elderly people needing electric fans are asked to contact Nelda Parker with the Haltom City Police Department. Their phone number is 222-7100, or Bobby Arthur at the Haltom Senior Center. That's 834-8021. If you're in need of a fan, contact us and we have some available for us. And Mr. Mayor, if I could do something tonight a little out of line, if I could indulge on your, I'd like to have a gentleman come forward, Greg Van Nieuwenhuis, well-dressed man in yellow shirt tonight. This, you can go ahead and step up to the microphone. This is going to hurt a little bit. Greg has been with the city for better than 10 years, I believe. We're losing Greg. He's resigned. He's going to out in the secular world, and for what I think is a pretty good promotion for him. His boss doesn't know what a quality employee he's getting, and I don't see his boss in the audience tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of say what I want to. I met Greg about 5 or 6 years ago at some council meetings. If Greg could turn around just slightly and show you the back of his head, his hair is very cleanly manicured. When I met Greg, his hair came about 6 or 7 inches below his collar. His wife pointed out that that's the only thing he had going for him. At that time, I sat down with him and his wife both and told him we needed to find something else that Greg had going for him. But Greg, I just wanted to take an opportunity, and maybe some of the council members may want to tell you how much we appreciate the job you've done for Haltom City, your dedication. A lot of people don't see Greg around here, but if you come by at 6 o'clock in the morning, his vehicle's out here, and come here at 6 o'clock in the evening, his vehicle's still here. I don't know if he sleeps here, but I know he's here a tremendous amount of time, and he's been a very good asset to the city of Haltom City the 10 years he's been here. I've been proud to be able to work with you. I'm going to miss you, and I hope our friendship continues.
Back at that time, and I was 29 years old, and that council took a heck of a chance on me. I had very limited experience, I'd like to think it worked out for the best for both of us. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with my colleagues. I've enjoyed working in this community. The citizens here are so appreciative, so concerned, so understanding. They are the real asset to this city, and I've enjoyed working with the council during these past 10 years. And for that, I'd like to thank you all.
If you will, remain members of the council. Any comments you'd like to make in addition to what John has said? Mr. Torres?
Greg and I have said our words to each other, and John is actually quite right. Greg has been a real asset to this organization. Even the year and a half I've had the opportunity to work with him. One of the hardest working staff members we've had, and one of the hardest I've ever had the opportunity to work with. We appreciate that, and I think Greg's moving on is probably going to be to his advantage and broadening his horizons, and certainly I don't want to be viewed as one of those people that hold anyone back from progress in their own personal professional development. So we wish you well, and Greg and I will be friends for many years to come as well. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fowler?
Yeah, I'd like to hold you back, Greg. Would you reconsider? Any pressure on you? No, I just want to thank Greg. As he mentioned, I was on the council at the time that we decided that this community needed to move to a full-time engineer to do a lot of the projects. We were spending in excess of right at the ballpark of $800,000 on outside engineering. We felt like if we could find someone that could fit the bill and help design some of the streets and answer some of the questions for the citizens was one of our big concerns. You know, we had a lot of people coming up here at that time that had questions on why this street was done and you know, why 3 guys were standing on a shovel and so on and so forth. So at that time, I don't know why we did it, but we did take a chance on Mr. Van Nieuwenhuis. And as Councilmember Williams said, the guy comes to the interview and his hair's down about halfway down his back, and only guy I know that comes to the interview with a tie that's not buttoned all the way, a shirt's not buttoned up just like it is today. He just kind of strolls in and sits down and gives us the lowdown on what he can and can't do, and we were very impressed with his openness and forwardness. And I can say one thing about Greg. For 10 years, you have given something to this city that it needs. You've had an open door. You know, you and I haven't always agreed on everything, and we've had our battles, but I can respect the fact that anytime you need Greg to go into the field and look at a project, or you needed to know something about a project, he didn't get passed on to the next guy down the line. Greg took the bull by the horns, and he would give you an answer. If he didn't know, he would take the time to go out there and spend it with you to look at an issue. And I have a great deal of respect for that. I hate to lose you, but I realize the necessity to move on, and hopefully maybe one day when you get ready to retire, although he is still a resident here, so everyone can still field questions in the evening. He's going to be a board appointment on one of ours before too long. But no, we thank you for all your service, Greg, and I wish the best for you and your family.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sutton?
Thanks. It's a testimony to your work, Greg, that you are going to stay here in Haltom City and actually be here in the city and enjoy the streets that you had a chance and you had the opportunity to make better here in Haltom City. And so we appreciate. You are staying in Haltom City, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So that's a testimony to the quality of work that you do, and we really appreciate it. And I really have appreciated, as a new councilman, the reports that you give and the clarity of them and the clearness of the engineering reports that you provide. Really, that made the job a whole lot easier to see what was going on with the projects, and I appreciate that. So really the hard part was just learning how to pronounce your last name, and after that, you know, the rest was easy. Thank you for the work that you've done, Greg.
Thank you.
Councilmember Branson?
Well, Greg, I hate to see you go. You were my first contact at City Hall, and I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing for you, but I appreciate your patience in teaching me everything that you taught me, and boy, I still have a lot more questions to ask you, but I really appreciate your patience. I know I asked some pretty tough questions, and sometimes I wasn't always my most polite self when I asked them, but I appreciate everything that you've done, and please don't be a stranger.
I won't. Thanks.
Councilmember Henderson?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to ask the council if we would like to name Carson Street after Greg Van Newton. Just hope it don't take 3 years to make the signs. No, Greg, thanks. Thanks for everything you've done. You know, I've worked with you now for 3 years almost, and it's been enjoyable. And you are going to be missed throughout the community and here in City Hall. So just good luck in the new pursuit of your joys, I guess.
Thanks.
The joys of engineering.
Councilmember Hurley.
Greg, I'd just like to wish you well and much success in your future.
Thanks.
Councilmember Averett.
Greg, there's not much left that I could say other than to echo what Councilmember Hurley said. I do wish you well and much success.
Thanks. I've truly enjoyed my tenure here.
And then last of all, let me just make a brief comment. Greg, I appreciate you more than I'll ever be able to tell you. You've always been a gentleman. I've always appreciated your thoroughness and your professionalism. And I've appreciated that quick wit and the quick smile and the devilish gleam that sparkles on those eyes every once in a while that keeps things interesting and keeps things upbeat and moving forward. So thank you for your contribution to Haltom City. As you move into the private sector, we wish you well, and we are so glad you've chosen to continue to live in Haltom City. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, there being no further announcements or events, we move to item number 6. Mr. Torres, you want to introduce item number 6 for us?
Greg, come back up to the podium, actually. What a guy. I mean, this is the characteristic of this guy and his personality. His last day on the job was Friday. Technically, he's not employed tonight. He worked for me Friday, and now I work for you this evening, I guess. But here you are at the podium. Greg, I'll just turn this over to you and let you handle your last item.
Item number 6 on your agenda is to consider entering into a contract with the firm of Palmer Price to set up a stormwater utility for the city of Haltom City. The main points on this contract are to set up a utility cost of service, to set up the database, to set up the rate design, to set up a community awareness program, to conduct the required public hearings in accordance with state law, and then to do the utility billing interfaces so that the TAD records, our water records, will all work out. And if we go ahead and adopt a rate, that'll work accordingly. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council might have.
Questions for Greg on this item? Councilmember Sutton.
Thank you, Mayor. From what I understand, this is something that has been talked about within Haltom City for many years about whether we should do this or not. Is that correct?
Yes, I think this originally came up about 3 or 4 years ago, and at that time, the Public Works Director and myself looked into this pretty thoroughly, saw what other cities were doing. Quite a few of the cities are doing this. Almost every single one of our neighbors are. And then we also looked at, if we did adopt a utility, where could we use the funds? And I think what really brought this to the forefront is the drainage in the city. In the short time that you've been a council member, I'm sure you've heard quite a few people complain to you about drainage problems in their neighborhood. And right now, the Haltom City attacks drainage problems strictly through what limited funds there are in the general fund in the annual budget. This would be an opportunity to identify additional funds to correct some of those drainage problems, and we could also use any fees collected to fund the storm drainage improvements when we reconstruct streets, which would allow general fund dollars to go further to reconstruct more streets, or your bond fund dollars to go further to reconstruct streets. Additionally, some of high-profile projects that have recently come to light since Mr. Torres has arrived here is the completion of the Saucer Drive drainage situation and the Salona Circle area down on the south part of town. On that on that area specifically, Haltom City hired an engineering firm out of Fort Worth to study that problem. However, there wasn't funding available to take the next step, and that's to actually come up with the construction plans, hire a contractor to do the work. Another problem that's, I would say, recently surfaced, but it's been around for quite some time, is the Haltom Pond drainage situation. We could collect fees from this fund to go ahead and alleviate that problem once and for all.
Okay, so what I understand about this is that this would actually incur an additional fee that the residents and commercial and entities within the city would then begin to pay in addition on their water bill. Is that correct?
If the council so adopts, it'd be similar to the refuse fee that's on your water bill for garbage collection.
Okay, and I understand that a pretty significant portion of this, based upon this resolution here, first of all, is transferred into an EDC fund. Is that correct?
I think there's money identified in the current year budget out of economic development funds for this contract.
I see. Okay, so that's just...
It's already been pre-identified.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Van Nieuwenhuis, you had mentioned earlier about the projects that this fund would help work towards or be used towards utilization for all the drainage channels, creeks, whatever the case may be, in areas we're having isolated flooding or large-scale flooding. That's what this is designed for?
Exactly. Actually, the parameters on what you can use the funding for is pretty widespread. It basically has to be drainage related. It could go down so far as to fund personnel. I don't know that I'd recommend that, but it can fund capital purchases that are going to be used to clean the creeks. It can be used to, we have looked into the drainage situation across from the high school, which the city's already expended those funds. We could repay the general fund back and the Economic Development Corporation for loaning us the money to do that repair. So almost anything drainage related, any fees collected could go to fund anything drainage related.
Okay, and it's bad. I know you in the last 10 years as well as myself are aware of the many problems that we have. Of course, we don't have problems right now because it's not raining, but as soon as it starts raining in the fall and spring, have some serious drainage areas that we need to address that we aren't able to. This year, I know you've been privy to the budget so far. What was the proposed amount for drainage improvements? And Richard, I know you can answer and I can answer it, but I would just for the viewing audience, what was the proposed amount? Was it $37,000 that was proposed?
I don't know. That proposal actually didn't come from my department, so I couldn't tell you what was proposed. But I can tell you that in recent years, we've only had identified that line item in the neighborhood of 12 to 17,000. Does that sound right, David?
It was proposed, just to help you out then, it was proposed for $37,000 this year and it had to be cut to zero just due to the budgetary constraints that we have. But understanding that doesn't help the people out there in the community that are getting flooded, that open their front door and the water goes in the front door and out the back. And this would be a fee that would be specifically earmarked to be used towards nothing but drainage improvements and utility improvements.
Correct. That's all it can be used for.
Okay. And would the proposal that y'all have looked at from the staff and engineering, would it be something that would be contributed by all members? Is that the proposal? Whether it be churches, schools, businesses, residential, anyone that has the meter?
Actually, you get to make that choice. Some communities have opted out with schools and churches. Other communities have not, being that most of your churches and schools have huge parking lots, and those are main contributors to drainage. You take grasslands, residential homes, most of the lot is vegetation. That has the ability to hold quite a bit of water before it runs off. Where you take, commercial entities, huge parking lots, none of that water gets in the ground. It strictly gets into the streets or onto adjoining property. So that's a decision that you'll have to make. I can tell you early on, my feeling, not that it matters anymore, but my gut feeling, if you're contributing to drainage runoff, I think, it's only fair that you participate in the program.
So I know this is a parting shot for you. Is this something you feel like that this city could utilize and help alleviate some of the many drainage problems that we have?
Yes, I'm the individual on staff I mean, it's unfortunate that we're having this conversation in the July, August time because of the weather outside. But if we were having this meeting in April, I guarantee you there'd be people here that were complaining about drainage problems. It's my office, my department that gets the phone calls after the rain event or that water's rising in the creek. What can you do for me? So it's probably the fire department first, but it's engineering that's a close second.
Thank you very much, Greg.
You're welcome.
Greg, I have a question I want to ask you. I know Haltom City is not unique in having drainage problems, but we've got plenty. We've got a whole bunch, and it's scattered all over the city. It's not just in the south part of town or the middle part of town. It's also up in the northern part of town. Have you or anyone you know of put any kind of an estimate on the millions of dollars, how many millions of dollars it would take to fix all of our drainage issues?
No, and part of the reason is I do have a list of about 20 drainage problems, but some of those are rather local, maybe an intersection that floods every time we get a somewhat significant rain event. Some of them are much larger. They're up by where Mr. Sutton lives, where you've got the bank that's just sloughing off into Big Fossil Creek. And I would hate to hazard a guess, but I can tell you it's well into the millions of dollars, and I could easily say it's over $10 million. It would not surprise me if that number is even actually closer to $50 million.
Are you talking about just the Big Fossil issue?
No, I'm talking citywide.
Throughout the whole city?
Right.
So I think our citizens can see from that this is no small matter. This drainage challenge we have, this wastewater runoff is a major problem, and that this is a way that a number of our neighboring cities have found a way from a practical point of view to address that. So thank you for that. Councilmember Williams?
I'm trying to figure out how Greg can tell us consequently we may or may not know. If this does not pass, what's the downfall to the city if this resolution doesn't pass?
Well, if this doesn't pass, we're going to go about business the same way. I mean, I think this is a way to fix the Salona Circle area. I mean, and the reason why I've brought that one up a couple of times is I'll bet you we see those residents once or twice a year. I mean, the way we're going, unless some area else suffers in the budget, that's the only way we're going to find funding for this. So, the only way to get money for drainage projects are to borrow bonds or to use general fund monies. And right now, as you know, you've almost done through the general fund. There's just not a lot of money left over. I think we found a couple areas, where if we cut over here and maybe property value that we might sell, it gets more than what we anticipated, we have found $100,000. But on the order that we're talking about for drainage problems in this city, I think $100,000 isn't going to go very far.
Well, you were talking that the council could put this on who they wanted to and not put it who they didn't want to. And you also brought up churches and schools. Can you think of any instances of those two entities that are contributing to water in your various floodplains, like Salona Circle? Are we getting water from a church or a school?
Yeah, isn't it South Birdville that's on Salona that's contributing to it? But some of that, I don't know that it's fair. I don't want to come across as blaming the school. You got to understand, 30 years ago, drainage wasn't what it is now. People just built. And if you were at the bottom of the hill, you got more water. But that didn't matter when you were talking about building a residential structure on a 10-acre, 15-acre spread. But now we've got residential structures 5 to an acre. I mean, that's quite a bit more in that same area. So the runoff, consequently, is quite a bit more than what it used to be.
Consequently. In other words, basically what this is just sort of an insurance policy where everyone in the city contributes and toward fixing the drainage.
Sort of. It's a definite funding source so that we've got dollars identified on an annual basis. It's like a capital improvements program for drainage is exactly what it is.
And it may catch you off guard. Richland Hills. I didn't know you were 29 when they hired you, so you were a little boy when Richland Hills was flooding. And they probably still have some water problems. Do you know if they have this in effect?
Yes, and their rate's $3 per residential customer.
You know the commercial rate?
I think that's $19.45 per commercial entity. So, per acre. Okay.
Okay, like, let's take my business, for instance. If we went with their rate, my rate would be 19.
If you have 1 acre, correct. If you have an acre and a half, it would be roughly $30.
I think we're going to get somebody to come help us.
The information that was in your packet.
This is Diane Palmer of Palmer Price. She's a lot more knowledgeable on this subject than I am.
The information that was provided to you.
Ms. Palmer, if you
from
will, get
oh,
closer
sorry.
to the microphone.
The information that was provided in your packet was from a survey that we completed in January of just what the rates were for surrounding communities. And it was standardized such that it's a typical, quote unquote, single family residence and then a typical small business, if you will, and standardized at an acre. A very large Target, for instance, might pay substantially more, and a real small mom and pop corner grocery store might pay less than an acre, particularly if they're not on an acre.
I fall in the mom and pop. I've got a little over a third of an acre, so
Right.
where would I fall in that?
Well, we as we go through and collect the information on the cost and how much we're trying to set rates for from this fee, then we will propose to you some possible rate designs, and there's several ways to do it. Not every city is doing it exactly the same. The law gives you some leeway to look at it in different ways. Typically, for commercial properties, it's either calculated precisely for the commercial property based on your square footage versus a large Target, or there may be an opportunity to tier the rates, such there might be a small business rate, medium-sized business rate, very large business rate. And we will, when we gather the data and we know what the possible opportunities are and how you can look at it, then we can present those to you and you can review that.
The $19 caught my attention because I've been in the same business for 20 years. When I moved in, my water bill ran about $17 a month. I have a restroom with a restroom and a place to wash your hands. Sink. Thank you. And it's escalated to, my water bill runs about $19.50 a month. So if we put that in there, then my water bill would run $38 a month.
Potentially.
But I would be paying my share toward drainage problems in Haltom City.
Right. The law requires us to do an inventory of all the parcels in town, to look at the drainage-related parameters on those parcels, and it's typically how much impervious area there is. It's not grass, that's not a normal condition, and to fairly distribute the cost among all the different parcels depending on that drainage-related parameter. So that's what the bulk of this particular study will do, is to collect all that data so that you can look at it and analyze it, and we would recommend a rate structure.
And finally, is there a time factor on this? Is 5 years, 10 years, or is it from now on?
No, one of the good things about a stormwater utility as opposed to stormwater impact fees is we've just gone through water and sewer impact fees a couple of years ago and recommended a revision to those. Those are all set on a 10-year time frame. So every 10 years, you've got to look at it again. A stormwater utility is basically perpetual until the council decides not to do it. There's several very positive things about a stormwater utility in that you can look at both existing problems, whereas stormwater impact fees, you can only look at future problems within the next 10 years. So you can address a lot more issues across the city with a stormwater utility.
So there could be a light at the end of the tunnel as far as the pay. We could put it in and eventually do away with it.
Yes.
Once the drainage problems were taken care of.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councilmember Williams?
No.
Councilmember Hurley and then Councilmember Fowler.
The only question I have, this is just a resolution to bring the mechanism into place. You will come up with a rate structure that the council will review.
Right. I imagine what we'll do is Diane will bring before you a bunch of different rate structures. And so then you can pick and choose whether you want to go make it strictly across the board, based strictly on a ratio of impervious area over the lot area, or whether you want to take into consideration, a tiered rate, and she'll bring those to you. The other thing we need to decide that will somewhat influence that is how much we want to spend on drainage a year. Maybe we want to spend $500,000 on drainage a year, maybe we want to spend $1 million, and that's going to have somewhat of an influence on how you make your rate structure as well.
Councilmember Fowler?
So Greg, from the common man's standpoint, to make this easy, this is a way for us, for everyone to contribute to a fund that will in turn annually come in. We will budget X amount of money for, and then we can either go out and let's say we're going to redo Haltom Road from one end to the other, and we need to put the drainage in. Instead of the general fund bearing 100% of the project, you could use the storm utility to pay for all the undergrounds that would carry the storm water, and then that would allow us maybe, instead of doing half of Haltom Road one year, maybe be able to do the whole thing, because the stormwater utility would be paid for out of this.
Exactly.
And so this would allow us an opportunity to go out to bonding companies or anything else and say we generate $150,000 a year in our stormwater utility, in our storm, or whatever we're going to call it, and then we're able to go out and borrow $2 million for 4 years and do a bunch of projects up front in order to
Exactly. You can do it. You can either go spend as you collect it, or you can borrow against it. And again, that's your option.
But this is really the only mechanism and opportunity that we have to fix the magnitude, as you explained earlier, of drainage problems that we have. This is the only opportunity
Right.
we really have to do that.
Exactly. As Diane mentioned, the state has two mechanisms. The stormwater utility, which is what I'm recommending, and recommending we get into a contract with Palmer Price, or the drainage impact fee. What's unattractive about the drainage impact fee is that accounts for problems because of future growth. We've got a lot of problems in this town because of existing growth, and you cannot use drainage impact fees to correct existing problems.
So the only thing that we can do is utilize where everyone participates on their water bill, and we use those funds for current and future problems.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Williams, and then I want to ask the city manager if he has any comments to make before I call for a motion.
I'm in line for a motion.
I would like the city manager if he has any comments on the information presented.
Diane, if you would kind of walk through the timetable, I think that's important to let everybody understand that this isn't something that's going to happen next month, or if
Right.
you could just kind of walk through.
In your packet
your
in
timetable.
Exhibit A, there was a outline of what the different tasks are. And one of the things that we'll do immediately is start looking at the parcels and what water meter you might be able to attach that parcel bill to. One of the complications of these kinds of utilities is that you don't really have anywhere a database where you know what parcel goes with what water meter. It seems like you do, but that's only true for about 80% of the parcels. You have a lot of strips, shopping centers, for instance, where you may have 6 tenants and 3 water meters and 2 properties. And so we have to kind of match all those up, and that's what dictates a critical path on these types of projects. But we'll start that immediately. We'll start looking at what can we describe as drainage or stormwater cost. We'll identify all those that are in each department and prioritize those and look and see what you might use these funds to pay for. We will look at the billing system, see what has to be done to be able to bill this fee, because typically the billing system wasn't designed to do this. They usually have to be revised to do this. We will look at a community awareness plan so that people understand what you're trying to do with this money. We put together, we'll update the survey for you so that you know what other people are charging for similar utilities. Nearly, I would say at least 60 to 70% of the cities in the DFW area have a utility, or they're thinking about it very seriously. It's something that nearly all the cities, particularly the large ones to medium-sized cities, have done already since 1992 when this law became available. So it's been in place for 10 years, and it's providing funding for a lot of cities to address their drainage issues. And then we anticipate, based on the amount of data cleanup that we'll have to go through, that we would probably be ready to have the public hearings to be able to tell you what, or have you consider the different rate designs in a May to August timeframe next summer. If the data cleanup goes very quickly, which we're trying to get geared up to make sure that happens, it'll happen a little sooner. If we run into problems with trying to put the database together, it'll stretch out a little bit.
Anything further, Mr. Torres?
No, that's all, Mayor. Pretty much all the main points have been brought out. This is a topic that has been discussed significantly in the past year and a half that I've been here. And again, you know, we've budgeted most of these funds in this operating year to address this. So staff is ready to proceed. It'll be a big project. It'll require a lot of citizen input. A lot of meetings will result from this. But there is no decision, a final decision being made tonight. That will come later. And I think that's important.
Okay, I mentioned a moment ago after Mr. Torres made any comment he'd like to, I was ready for a motion. Councilmember Williams was ready to go forward with that. Councilmember Williams?
Thank you, Mayor. I think seeing the benefits that the city could bear from this, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2003-037-16.
Okay, Councilmember Hurley had his light on next.
That's second.
Councilmember Fowler? Okay.
Just for a second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of item number 6. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, if you will register your vote, I will display it. Ms. Staub, you have recorded the vote. Normally, we stop to take a break about an hour to an hour and a half along the way. Members of the council, you want to do that before we get into the item number 7? Let's take 10 minutes. We'll be back at 15 till 9.
Hey, Pat, I think you need to be worried about your second item.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're called back to order. We're ready now to move forward with item number 7, the second reading of the revision of the water and the sewer services provided to the city of Haltom City. Mr. Torres, you want to introduce this for us, please?
Mayor, I will turn the podium over to Pat Elfrink, our finance director, for this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Manager. This is a continuation of a project that started months ago. I think it was around February or March. City Manager and I came to the council and said that it's been a long, long time since our water rates received very intensive scrutiny as to why we charge what we do and how we go about doing it. A firm of two professionals who have been in the business for a long time and have a great deal of experience assisted an internal committee as we went through this process of reviewing our rates, reviewing the inputs, the justifications for those rates. That committee consisted of the city manager, the assistant city manager, the city engineer, the assistant city engineer, public works director, our utility billing supervisor, our city controller, myself, and again, these two professionals. We worked for months meeting on a regular basis to look at all of the many, many influences and impacts that go into setting water rates. And about, I think, a month and a half ago, we first came to council with a draft report, at which time we fielded many questions on the resulting study that is here, and copies of which were sent to the library for the public's inspection. At the last council meeting, we came to the council with the first reading of this resolution, where we are recommending rate changes that we have here. And for the benefit of our audience who may not have seen this last time, I will go into this just a little bit, that our water and sewer fund is mandated to be treated as an ongoing business concern. It must operate on a for-profit basis. Those profits are plowed back into the enterprise to take into account the needs for ongoing capital infrastructure replacement. One of our loan guarantees, we have many loan guarantees. I'm using that term for the public. They're referred to in the business as bond covenants. And national accounting standards mandate that we set our water rates at a level designed to recover our operating expenditures, our debt service, and our capital expenditures. As we went through this study, we had several key goals in mind that we kept reminding ourselves about. We wanted to keep rates as low as possible. We wanted to set rates so that all the customers, residential and commercial, paid their fair share for the water they used, for the impact that they had on the system, for the demand that they had on the system. We wanted to have adequate revenues to pay for the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of the system, adequate revenues to pay for past and future major capital improvements, and again, adequate revenues to stay in compliance with our mandated borrowing agreements. One of the most key items in the recommendation, the study from our outside consultants that I do have copies of here, if anyone in the audience would like to have a copy, is a survey of 10 cities, I believe it is, in the area. This survey ranks residential water and sewer bills from high to low. And before adjusting these rates, Haltom City is well below the average of these 10 cities in the average water bill for a residential location using 5,000 gallons a month. That average before adjusting these rates is $35.70. After making these rate adjustments that you're considering tonight, if you were to pass these as they are, that average bill would go up to $45.60, which is still below the average of this group of 10 cities, which is $46.25. And something that the city manager reminds me of is we're looking at our rates right now and we're going to change them. Our intention is not change them again for internal reasons for several years, although we have talked about the pass-through provisions where future cost increases from the city of Fort Worth, our supplier, will be passed through to our customers. But we are still below the average of $46.25. And I want to point out, too, one relatively minor, less emphasized aspect of these recommendations. We have also looked at some of our fees that are associated with water service. We did a survey of other communities, and there's a late payment penalty fee that we have applied for many years. It's set at 5% of the past due bill. We are also recommending to increase that to 10%. That's the only fee. None of the others are changing. No deposits. That's the only fee, which is a penalty to people who pay their bills late, is going from 5% to 10%. I passed out a water and sewer surcharge rate history in the pre-council session, and I'll hold up what that looks like. I think you'll all notice that it has a chart at the bottom, and I have some copies here for the public if anyone would like some. This is a document the council's not seen before tonight. I had a member of my staff working on this rather diligently. We looked at the rates going back to October of 1991. And in the middle of this page, and it's a pretty crowded page, I hope you'll just focus on the chart, which kind of gives the picture. We start with an average bill, and this time, for different reasons, we're using 7,000 gallons. An average bill in October of 91 was $39.69. In July of 1993, 21 months later, adjustments were made that increased that average bill from $39.69 to $2.11. That was a 1.1% increase. It went on for 3 months, and that's the shortest period here, to where we then had another increase where the average bill went from $40.11 to $42.46. But then we went almost 8 years before we had an increase. During that 8-year period, the average bill actually went down twice. So we had a very long period of time for different reasons, and I can't recollect going back that far, even though I've been here that whole time, just why we decreased the rates on 2 different occasions. I think one of them was related to a pass-through, and I believe one of them was related to a tax increase. If something was passed, that we would lower the rates by a penny. That's what I seem to recall. And now, unfortunately, after an 8-year period, a long period in this business, of keeping rates very low, very nearly unchanging, we are faced with an increase that is recommended to this council as a result of this very thorough study that was done. At that point, I don't think I have anything else, Mr. Manager, if you'd like to say anything, or anyone here on the council.
Mr. Torres, you have something you want to say before I open the floor to questions from the council?
If I could, Mayor, just make a few points in addition to some of those that Pat made. I don't think staff likes the position we're in, where we're coming to the table with a recommendation like this. I think it puts us all in a very uncomfortable position. And I think the City Council knows that, and I would hope that most of the citizens can know and understand and appreciate that as well. In the budget that you have and that we'll be discussing even more depth on Wednesday night, I think you see that we have cut personnel and operating expenses within this fund significantly for next year. And we needed to do that because the bottom line is we needed to get the expenses less than the revenues, and we've not done that in the present year. It's presented a problem. Another thing that is very critical is the letter that has been placed before you tonight from the Texas Water Development Board. That's a very important letter. It's straightforward, to the point. We're not meeting our coverage ratios, and they want us to do that. That is a major problem we have to rectify. You just can't look the other way, or you can't put it off for several years. I'm also very focused on the fund balance issues. We think that at the end of this fiscal year, we're going to achieve a 10.9% fund balance in this operating fund. Even with the proposed rate increases, even with those rate increases and all the cuts, we think we'll only achieve 17% at the end of the next fiscal year. And our current policy is set at 20%. So it's still going to take us a couple of years to get us to the level that we desire. And I think my final point is this. I get some gratification or some satisfaction, I guess, in what we're doing when I drive around town and I look at all the improvements that we're making. We're not putting money presently, nor are we proposing to put a lot of extra money into just regular operations. We're investing a large amount of money into our capital improvements. We're investing in the future of Haltom City, and you can't do that, unfortunately, just by holding on to the same rate year after year. We find ourselves playing catch up. And keep in mind, a lot of those capital improvements that are ongoing right now were things that were mandated by the EPA because the city wasn't taking care of business, and the state, feds in this case, stepped up to the plate and came in and made us invest $11-point-some-odd million in our infrastructure because we weren't doing it ourselves. And I think we need to get beyond that kind of role where we have big brother coming in and slapping us a little bit and telling us we have to do things. I think we need to be a little more responsible and take care of that business ourselves. And one of the ways we can do that is by increasing these water rates. So that's all I have, Mayor, unless there are any
Okay,
other questions.
I would like either Mr. Elfrink or yourself to address this Texas Water Development Board. Looks like this letter is pretty serious for the benefit of the people in the audience and the people who are watching. They're watching us very closely. Would you explain what this document is?
Sure.
Summarize it for the benefit and of our audience, and then Councilmember Henderson has a question.
I'll be glad to, Mayor. Basically, some years ago, when we received an administrative order from the EPA, we were mandated to make certain improvements to our sewer system. This is the kind of thing that happens throughout Texas, and the state of Texas has a special bank, so to speak, an agency, the Texas Water Development Board, where municipalities can go to borrow money for these massive improvements, and I think the sewer improvements was at like $11.2 million altogether, and that's when we started going to this agency to borrow funds. But the great thing is you borrow at below market rates. However, they do extract certain promises to ensure that their money is well invested. One of those is that they require any entity who is borrowing money to submit on an annual basis a copy of their annual audited financial reports, which we have done faithfully through the years. To show that this agency is doing its job, shortly after our most recent audit was sent to this agency, an item that was in that audit, an item that I had brought to the attention of the council at its presentation to the council of the audit, was that one of the key financial ratios in there, it's referred to as our debt coverage ratio, was not being met. In simple math, it means that you take the entire cumulative amount of debt that we owe, and if it's over a 12 or 15 year period, you divide it by 12 or 15, and our revenues that we come in should be 125% of that amount. And we are below that. Our audit showed that we are at 0.86% of that amount due to the cumulative effect of some things that had happened in the water fund. The water fund lent $260,000 for the repair of that bank failure on the creek by the high school. The water fund was used as a source of revenue in a deliberate manner last year to help support the general fund. We made a deliberate decision to charge a much higher franchise fee from the general fund to the water fund. And we have also had the end of a drought that has seen us with good deal higher rainfall levels, and so we have reduced revenue from that angle also. But the short of it is, from that letter, they've put us on notice, and we have told them from the very beginning when we got that letter, and Mr. Torres, when he first arrived last year, he wanted to do a water rate study at that time, but there were just too many things going on. But we brought the need for that water study to the council before receiving that letter. And we knew there were issues that had to be addressed, but we will not be able to borrow more money from this body, from this agency, until this issue is corrected. The fortunate part of that aspect is that right now we don't need to borrow any more money, and we don't anticipate until after this deficiency is corrected, and I'm sure it will be eventually.
Bottom line is, they're saying our revenue system and our rates currently are insufficient, and they want us to present to them a copy of the corrective action we're taking in order to bring this within their guidelines.
2 or 3 times a month, Someone on my staff has been in contact with someone on that water board staff, and they've been kind of checking up on us to see the progress that we're making. They were very pleased at the very outset that, number one, we hired a very recognized and experienced professional consulting firm on the outside. The last time the city did that was in 1986. I have a copy of that study in my office, and they were just very pleased to see that we were moving on this issue right away.
Before I ask for a motion, I know there are a number of questions from the council regarding this matter. So first, on with the microphone, Councilmember Henderson, and then Councilmember Sutton.
Pat, this question's for you. With these proposed rates, how long will it take us to get into compliance with this 1.25%?
When we originally started this review, we had hoped to bring this matter to the council 2 or 3 months earlier than we did. We were delayed a little bit, but by the end of next year, we will be in compliance. I don't think we're going to make it at the end of this fiscal year, at the end of September.
Okay, and my next question was, you had mentioned on this average water bill thing, copy you passed around, you had mentioned 8 years. Is it not 12? Isn't it 12?
Well, I'm looking at the period where it says from October of '93 to the present. And I was just adding up 46 months as being about 4 years, 38 another 3, and then at 12 months.
Okay. I was going October 91 to present.
Yeah, and you know, you could make an argument that from the beginning of this chart right up until the present that it's pretty darn flat.
We've
too.
only gone up $4 over approximately 12 years.
Yes, that's very true.
Okay. That's all I have for now, Mayor. Thanks.
Councilmember Sutton.
Thank you, Mayor. Pat, you said that next year we'd be in compliance if these rates were in place. Is that correct?
There's
Our
a
fund balance.
There's a forecast in this study that shows that we would meet that 1.25% goal.
But there is no pressing funding need that we have next year to have that fund in compliance. Is that correct?
Well, I do believe that the longer we stay out of compliance with legal agreements that we've made with a state agency does not look favorably upon this city.
Okay.
That we need to bring ourselves in compliance with agreements that we've made just as soon as we can.
Okay. Pat, as you know, you and I worked some numbers out, and we did an allocation of where this rate increase was really coming from. And one of the things we discovered in the numbers that you and I agreed on is that about 25% of this rate increase is actually being allocated to the pass-through costs that we've received from Fort Worth. Is that correct?
All along, I think we've tried to avoid the impression that any one cost increase has contributed to this. So it's been 5 years since we've raised our rates, and so you have a 5-year cumulative effect of all the different expenditures that go into operating a business of this size.
I understand, Pat,
Yes.
but what we had talked about previously and what was passed out to the council was that 25% roughly of this increase was attributed to the 20 cents increase and the sewer increase that Fort Worth has passed on to us.
I don't have an argument with that. Right.
Okay. All right. And then we also discussed that some of the rest of those costs were allocated, about 10% for a capital improvement cost that was on the Public Works building, 26% was for the water fund growth, and 38% being attributed to the M&O increased cost. Okay. My question is that it took us 4 years to get into this shape that we're in right now. We have been backed into this because rates have not been raised over the past 4 years. My question is it right to pass on this level of an increase onto the citizens of Haltom City right now? Isn't there options, for instance, that we could, instead of being so aggressive at putting our fund balance up at the compliance level next year, maybe wait 2 years or 3 years to get that fund compliance into that fund into compliance where it is meeting the 126%?
Well, my my own professional opinion of that is we see a deficiency. The conservative, prudent approach is to try to correct it as soon as possible. For a variety of reasons. We have signed off on legal agreements with a state agency that we will adhere to certain covenants, to certain loan agreement, financial guideposts. And we are in default of that, if that's the right term. I would like to see us move in an expeditious manner to correct those, but that's just my opinion. The council could certainly decide to take a step approach to this, as you seem to be alluding to, and I don't know what the reaction might be from our auditors, from the bond rating agencies, or from the state agency if we move slowly to correct the situation.
Okay, thank you, Pat. One further question, and it really, you use some pretty strong words there called legal or in default. For a counselor, do we actually meet the legal definition in this fund balance, in your opinion, Counselor, for what he's talking about?
Councilmember Sutton, I can't comment on that. I'm looking at the documents that have been passed out tonight, in particular the document from the Texas Water Development Board, and they've stopped short of saying that we're in default, but they have stated that we need to remedy the situation.
So they're not saying that we're in default legally?
Not in this letter that was passed out tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Elfrink or Mr. Torres on this? And then we'll move on to receive a motion. Councilmember Henderson and Councilmember Williams.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to get one thing straight. If we're not in default, what kind of agreement did we sign stating that we needed to keep a 1.25 debt coverage ratio?
The proper term, anytime we borrow money, whether it's tax-supported money or revenue-supported bond debted like this, we signed we agree to a rather voluminous set of legal agreements that set out very tight, very clear definitions of certain aspects of the operation of either the general fund and its tax revenue picture, or the water and sewer fund and its revenue structure. I'll have to perhaps ask Mr. McCliney, who is much more of an expert in the bond issuance field, if he might comment on these agreements that are commonly referred to as bond covenants.
Mr. McCliney, if you will, introduce yourself and tell us why you're the expert on this particular subject. We know that, but the people...
My name is Mark McCliney. I'm with Southwest Securities. Worked with the city as financial advisor when you issue bonds, when you plan to issue bonds, and for the bonds that you've had outstanding, including the ones we're talking about with the Texas Water Development Board. On your revenue bonds, and that's strictly what we're talking about, revenue bonds supported by the utility system, there's two main covenants. There's many main covenants that are structured, and they're all listed in the bond ordinance authorized by City Council when they were issued. The two covenants that were really being discussed today is, one, the rate covenant, and two, the additional bonds tests. Those are two covenants that are required. And I haven't seen this letter. I'm not sure I've seen this letter. But the rate covenant most simply states that you're going to maintain rates sufficient to cover all operation and maintenance expenses, all debt service, all reserve funds on first lien debt and second lien debt, and any other legal obligations of the utility system. The moment that you're not meeting those requirements, and I heard the number 0.86, I think it was 0.86, you're in what's called technical default. Default is when you do not have enough money to make bond payments. Technical default is when you're outside of your bond covenants. In that regard, there's a big difference between defaulting on bonds and being in technical default. Defaulting on bonds means you don't have money to cover it. We fortunately have always had money in reserves to cover that. Second item that's been brought up, a little bit not not necessarily exactly related to this, but the fund balance. Drawing down on the fund balance from a goal of 20% down to estimated 10 to 11% is another item that is outside of bond covenants, but it is looked at in the financial picture of the city. So you want to keep pushing towards those goals that are outside of bond covenants. But simply stated, then the other covenant we're talking about is the 1.25 times additional bonds tests. And that's where you look at your bond structure. And by the way, this is all in the ordinance, and I don't want to, ordinance is quite voluptuous, not voluptuous, thick. I get my mind going different directions. Thank you. But there's a section in there, and the section will be, and it is, Brenda would have it in with all the bond ordinances, it would state rate covenant and additional bonds covenant. And then there's other covenants to go with. But the additional bonds covenant is the one that says you look at your picture at a snapshot, and if you were to issue bonds right now, do you meet 125% of your current bonds plus additional bonds, plus the proposed additional bonds? So in that respect, since you're not issuing bonds right now, that item you're not technically even have to look at. But the rate covenant is the item that you have to be meeting 1 times. Now, you're not meeting it. What are the repercussions? You couldn't go out to the bond market on a revenue bond at all. You could get downgraded at any time. You have got to disclose from this point on when you're issuing bonds. And it is a strike against the city. I mean, there's no question about it. You'd say it's not where you want to be. Have many cities been there? Of course. And when they start a plan to get things out, you want to get them out as quick as possible. If it takes 2 years, it takes 2 years. If it takes 1 year, that's the best. But you have to look at it, and this is what I think Jim's saying is, how can your citizens best afford it? Well, in a perfect world, you do it immediately. But that takes, money right now from individuals. So there's not you want to be doing what you're doing, and that's getting out. So with that, I think I've gone into more in depth on the technical default and the other defaults. But if there's any questions that I can help you with, happy to help.
Tracy, you have a further question?
Yes, well, just a few statements. With that being said, this city's been working very, very hard over the last 5 to 8 years to achieve a quality bond rating. And I would hate for something like this, as Mark's alluded to get this downgraded. It's something that we pride ourselves on, and I think it's something that we need to take care of. And with that being said, Mayor, I'm in line for a motion.
Okay, hold on to your motion. Councilmember Williams had his light on, I think, had a question.
I've got a couple of questions, Mark. You answered one of them with the bond ratings, because I figured that with that being out, that the bond ratings could suffer from that. The other, Pat, when Mr. Elfrank, when you and Mr. Sutton are working these numbers, are these numbers being passed along to every council member? Will we have equal knowledge of what's going on? Or
I had 20 or 30 copies of this with me on Thursday night, our last budget workshop. I was ready to pass them out that afternoon when myself and my controller had been coordinating with Mr. Sutton. He asked us to review this. We did not jointly develop it. He developed it completely. He asked then for my staff to take a look at it for reasonableness and perhaps even as an error checking mechanism. But I had 20 sets of it at least on Thursday night. Had we gotten into this discussion, the council most certainly would have had all this. And Mr. Sutton himself at the end of that meeting asked me to put these in each council member's box on Friday morning. I got busy and forgot. I didn't get them into your boxes until Monday morning. But the intention was to share this with council from the beginning, I believe.
okay, these these directions for y'all to look these over, was that directly to you or directly to the city manager?
The city manager shared and passed that on to me to take a look at it.
Jim emailed me the file, and I forwarded them to finance for checking.
Okay. It's like I said in pre-council. We get here on 6:30 the night of the council meeting. Council meeting starts at 7:30, and they start handing us packets and pamphlets and books and stuff. And for an hour period of time, that's a lot of stuff to digest, plus trying to pay attention in pre-council. And I don't know about the rest of the council members. I don't come up here on Monday morning and get my mail because I'll be here Monday evening. And so, it's to our disadvantage not to be able to go through this other than just, I got mine at 6:30. I don't know when the rest of the guys got theirs.
The meeting on Thursday night ended kind of abruptly. I really expected us to get into the water fund and discussing that. And again, it's my fault that on Friday morning it wasn't put into your boxes. Mr. Sutton had to ask me to do that.
Okay, and I guess my final question would be on this, kind of like reverting back to item number 6. If we don't take action on this and leave it like it is, it's detrimental to the city?
I would say extremely. Very much so.
Okay, one other question. On this letter from the Texas Water Development Board, it states on here this March of 03 is when, and we were supposed to provide a copy of the city's received rate resolution by 60 days. Were we not? Is that a bad question to ask?
No, we've been in contact with them. They know what's going on. That's not a drop dead deadline that they gave us. No, we're okay.
Well, I'm just reading it says, they must be revised with the board within 60 days. I didn't know if that was a.
No, that's.
They were trying to hurry us along, but
did it work?
But we had our own
We're okay.
pace.
We're okay. They haven't asked for their money back yet.
Thanks, Ms. Elfring.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Henderson, we're ready for your motion.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to move to approve ordinance 02003, 01303, with the rates as stated in the ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion. Councilmember Hurley.
I'd like to second that.
Councilmember Averett.
Mayor, because I was absent at the last council meeting and did not have the opportunity to take part in the discussions, and also because I was running late this afternoon and only now have received this additional information, I will be abstaining from voting on this issue.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Okay, there being none, if you'll register your vote, I'll ask the city secretary to read. Councilmember Hurley, did you have?
Yes, sir. I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, sir.
This might seem as a shock to a lot of people, and it might seem like an awful lot of money to go up on the water, and it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to a critical problem. If you look at the long-range picture of it, we haven't had a water rate increase since I've been on the council, which is going on 4 years. The reason being that the last manager that was here didn't want to upset anybody, and the pass-on increase from the city of Fort Worth, they felt like they could absorb, and I think maybe we've absorbed a price here within the last year or two. And I think the interest was in the best interest of the citizens at the time, but for short run and not for long run, because the integrity of our system and liquidity has got to be maintained, and we can't compromise the integrity of it. I feel like that it needs to be increased this amount, and I think the city needs to adopt a policy whereby we don't review these things every 5 years. I think we need to look at it whenever Fort Worth gives us a pass-on fee to maintain our 1.25% increase. So that's figured in with every pass-along fee that Fort Worth gives us. And that's a more organized approach to a water rate. That's all I've got to say.
Councilmember Williams, discussion on the motion, and then Councilmember Sutton.
Mr. Hurley, am I understanding you to say that you'd like to revisit this every time that the pass-through rate is?
It would be more appropriate that the city look at our rate structure to maintain the 1.25% every time Fort Worth gives us a pass-on charge for increase in treated water, instead of doing it every 3 or 4 years, hoping that we can keep the favor of all the citizens. fact of life is, you've got to pay for what the gas costs you to go in your car. We have to pay for the water that comes out of our faucets, and there's no way you can get around it.
Well, looking at this chart, it looks like they haven't done it since 1991 then, right?
Well, I can't remember a rate increase since I've been on the council.
Yeah, I got 98, no one.
And I think it was discussed when the last manager was here, and the feeling was that to soften the blow as much as they could on the citizens and not to go up on the rate increase, to make it easier for them. Which in the long run is kind of like if you got to go to a dentist, you're going to have to go sooner or later. You either go sooner and you get it fixed so you don't have to pull the tooth whenever you do go.
With our current budget, I think we're looking at cutting 27 positions. Is that right, city manager?
4 out of the water and sewer fund, but 27 total. 23 in the general fund and 4 in the water and sewer.
If this fails, could this take even more people out of those, more positions out of the city?
Well, you know, I've kind of played this out in my mind a bit. There are truly 2 or 3 legitimate options if this ordinance did not pass tonight or pass, you know, relatively soon. One, we could let our fund balance drop further. Not a good idea. I mentioned earlier that we anticipate ending this fiscal year 10%. So that's it's an option, but it's not a good option. Another option is certainly to cut revenues by you know, or expenditures by whatever amount you were going to raise the rates. I mentioned to you previously that the proposed budget for next year involves a cut of about $165,000 from the current fiscal year. And you know, part of that is those 4 positions. It's a bare bones budget now. I personally don't like the idea of having to go back to it and cut any more, but it's at least an option. So you know, you got several things you could do if these rates are not passed. None of them are good.
Point blank, if this fails, will we be cutting more people, more services?
That'll be my recommendation.
Thank you.
I've got one question to the manager. What is your recommendation on the best management philosophy for approaching this answer?
Well, you know, I like the idea of taking care of the problem right away. Let's just deal with it head on. You know, one way of looking at it is even though the rates haven't been increased over the past 4 or 5 years, however long it's been, you could make a point that citizens of Haltom City have gotten a windfall, and it was good while it was there, but I think reality is caught up with us, and you know, it's going to hurt us all. It's going to hurt me. I pay these rates too. You know, we're all of us who live here are looking at more money out of our pocket next year. I am very concerned about that fund balance, and I think y'all know that fund balance policy that we have in the books right now is something that I brought to the table last year. Calls for 20% balances to be retained in the major funds. And I told you then, and I'll tell you now, 25% is where we need to be. 20 was just, in my mind, a first step, and we're not even there now. And even with this rate increase, we're not going to, but we would take one major step in that direction, and I think we need to do it. I think we just need to suck it up and bite this bullet and take care of it, as unfortunate as it is.
Any other solution would be a compromise.
Yeah, and you know, I'm one to compromise, but that compromise is going to involve more cutting. And as y'all know, we've been through 3 or 4 budget workshops already. The cutting is very hard to do. It's very difficult.
Councilmember Sutton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. It seems to me that this council is acting a little bit prematurely. We have not even had the chance to corporately go through the water fund budget yet. We will do that probably Wednesday night. I am certainly of the opinion that we need to raise the rates for the minimum reason that we have had increased costs from Fort Worth. We need to do that. However, do we need to reach a fund balance in 1 year or 2 years? that can be debated. I strongly feel like there are options here that could be presented that we have not looked at, and I sense that we really should look at some of those options before we rush on into this water rate increase. I think that a rate increase will need to be done, but maybe not so much so fast. This, I want to draw attention to that we've already approved a fee that will be attached onto the water fund for our citizens. This will be a rate increase which will also affect their water bill. We are really putting a lot of burden upon the taxpayer with these, and I cannot vote in good conscience if we have not looked at the options to minimize the effect on our voters and our taxpayers and the people that pay water bills in Haltom City.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Okay.
What was the motion, Mayor?
The motion is for approval of item number 7. I believe you seconded the motion, and Councilmember Henderson made the motion. There being no further discussion, if you'll register your vote. Okay, we have a tie, and the mayor casts a yes vote, so the motion carries. I don't like seeing my water bill go up any more than anyone else does, but I think this is the best business decision to make at this time. And for clarity, not only for the record, but for our minutes, Madam City Secretary, will you read those the results?
Yes, Mayor. The vote was White, Henderson, Williams, and voting for, and Hurley voting for, and the nays were Councilmember Sutton, Fowler, and Branson, and Councilmember Averett abstaining.
Okay, we're ready to move now back up to item number 5. Mr. Torres, you want to introduce that one for us, please?
Mayor and Council, this item is also being brought back to you after some fairly lengthy discussions in recent meetings of our intent, a notice of our intent to issue some bonds, and I will turn them over to our Finance Director, Mr. Elfrink, to explain them. And I think, given the item that we just passed, Pat, I think this one warrants some pretty detailed explanation of what we're proposing.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think in summer of 2001, during the budget meetings, the conversation first began about one of these 3 items, which was renovation work at the senior center. It wasn't until 2002, the summer of last year, when we were working on the budget, that the council made a firm commitment that was something a project that really needed to be done. Also, in the past 2 years, we have committed to a complete renovation of our recreation center. And I mentioned at pre-council that while we have several new buildings under construction, new buildings are often much easier to estimate accurately. You have standard building guides that you can go on, but when you're renovating an older building, and I don't know how old is that building, 63, 61, pretty old building, your renovation and remodeling estimates can be very difficult to make. So we find ourselves in the situation where we need an estimated additional $100,000 to complete that project. And we also have finally here a land acquisition project of our Economic Development Corporation that has been discussed with the council in the past. This notice of intention is mandated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Also, it's reviewed by the Attorney General. It's reviewed by Mr. McCliney, who is still in the audience for this particular item. It's also reviewed while everyone's familiar with the services of our city attorney who attends our meetings every night. We have special attorneys in San Antonio, our bond attorneys, the firm of Fulbright and Jaworski, who review these documents to ensure that we comply with all of the many state and federal requirements for issuing this sort of debt. We believe that we have met all of those requirements, and this is one more of the legal steps that we must take to comply with all of those requirements. And Mark, our next two actions here on the 11th, help me, please.
The notice of, again, my name is Mark McCliney. The notice of intention, which is resolution that if it's authorized by City Council, basically gives notice to your voters what you intend to do. You will publish 2 weeks in a row stating what projects there are. And in this case, as Pat said, Senior Citizen Center, Rec Center, and land acquisition. That legal notice gets published 2 weeks in a row. 15 days after the first publication, the City Council, if a petition is not presented, the City Council can authorize the issuance of the notice of, or the certificates of obligation. The schedule for us is during the two publications, on August 11th, you'll do the first reading of an ordinance. 2 weeks later, at your regular council meeting, you'll actually receive bids and authorize the bonds, the certificates of obligation. Approximately 30 days later, funds would be received. Any questions? I'm happy to address.
Okay, there being none, Mr. Elfrink, any further information by you?
I'll just mention that the impact of the first two items, A and B, have been taken into account in our our budget deliberations for the general fund, and that is calculated into our needs estimate for debt service for next year. The impact is about $76,000.
Okay, Mr. Torres, any comment?
No, I think Pat covered it pretty well, unless council would like to cover it in greater detail.
Okay, members of the council, there being no further questions, I'm prepared to receive a motion regarding item number 5. Councilmember Hurley.
Mayor, I move we approve resolution R 2003-039-01.
Councilmember Fowler.
Second.
Have a motion, second. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, if you'll display your vote.
Mayor, I'd like to correct that. It's 2003-038-03. I read the wrong one.
Okay. We understand it was item number 5.
Right.
Madam City Secretary, you want to read the results?
Council members Henderson, Williams, Fowler, and Hurley voting aye. Council members Sutton and Branson voting nay.
We move now to item number 8, the monthly financial report. Mr. Elfrink, we're ready for you back at the mic.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. It's my last item. Greg is still in the audience. If I may just let the council know how much I've enjoyed working with him. I was hired just a little bit after. He has been a pleasure to work with. A very sharp mind and a very sharp wit, and keeps life interesting around here. But Greg, I don't think you've received your last paycheck, and I haven't received my wheelbarrow back that you lent or you borrowed from me. Okay, just keep that in mind, please. Yeah,
Donated that to the street fund.
I think he borrowed that maybe to clean out his office. I'm not sure. If anyone's seen his office, you would know he needs it. Back to business. The council's presented tonight with our June financial report. As I said in pre-council, we have been discussing a lot of this stuff in great detail during our budget review sessions, especially with the general fund. There is an item of note here, though. I said in council I didn't have anything of note to mention, but this one's worth at least 3 minutes to talk about, perhaps. On the first page, on the first line, current taxes, you see a current month figure there of $116,925. That one came to my attention when I was reviewing the reports, and I made an inquiry to our tax attorneys and looked at the history going back 5 years. Our 5-year history for the month of June is an average of $6,000. This is considerably larger, and I was kind of curious as to what happened. We think, according to our delinquent tax attorneys, that it's an indication, although maybe not the most solid one in the world, that the economy's turning around a little bit, because it's in July that our tax attorneys have delinquent accounts turned over to them according to state statutes. And what we think is a lot of people decided that they did not want these taxes, these properties, to fall into arrears. So that is a fairly significant boost into our current taxes there, and it means that we'll, a little bit guaranteed, I think, that we'll make our budget on that one particular line item. Again, other than that, though, I don't have anything in particular to point out. You have the sales tax charts in here, but I believe that these charts are not as current as the ones that I took to you during our budget workshops. I rushed some of those together and brought those to you, and we have currently just a little over $21 million invested. Most of that money is for our capital improvement projects that are ongoing right now. So at that point, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions from the council for Mr. Elfrink? There being none, yes, Councilmember Fowler.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I got my light on late. Mr. Elfrink and
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hurley and I spoke a little bit in pre-council. Pat, the current month of sales tax shows $277,000 in receipts.
Yes, sir.
And shows to be 65% of the estimated budget. This is through month 6, is that not correct?
Through 9 months, 3/4, 75%.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, so that's where, so we're 10% below right now.
Yeah, and this chart, this table is always 1 month off from the chart that's in the back. The chart that's in the back, we run that on a bookkeeping
This is
standpoint.
current month, and is this where it says as of June 30th? Is this the June
That is actually,
sales tax, or is this May?
we received this check during the month of June, but it's for sales in April. And on your sales tax chart, it shows as an April return. We do it that way so that the forecasting's more accurate.
Okay, so what do you anticipate us finishing at the end of the year, percentage-wise, on sales tax?
That would be the same number that we discussed at our budget workshops. This monthly report does not change that unless there's something really significant.
3.5. Is that correct? Page 9.
The year-end estimate still stands at $3,314,000. We haven't changed that yet.
Why is it 3.5 million?
Where do you see?
On page 9.
I'm sorry.
Page 9.
Oh, we've made adjustments from that chart. That chart does not take into account lost retail centers in the town. The city manager and I have discussed that on a couple of occasions, and I've tried to point that out to the council at least on a couple of occasions too.
So this chart's no good?
That chart's perfectly good, sir. It's just a different perspective. They're used for different purposes.
We think it's going to be less than 3.5, even though this graph depicts 3.5.
Yes.
Primarily because
It's
Kmart.
Yes.
The closure of Kmart.
Okay, I understand, but where's the graph that depicts Kmart being out of here?
It's not there, sir. We've done that on worksheets in our office, and looking at understanding what the Kmart revenue was. It was a little over. I don't even want to mention it in public, sir. I'm not supposed to.
Okay. Can I get a copy of those when you get opportunity tomorrow?
What, sir?
The forecasted with Kmart and the others out of here. Can I get that?
I'll have to ask our city attorney if I can give that to you. We've had this discussion before. The comptroller doesn't allow me to release that information.
No, he's not asking for a sales tax report. He's just asking for the forecasting methodology
Sure.
or number that we anticipate on sales tax year end.
Well,
Is
that,
that right?
Yes, sir. I'm sitting up here and I'm asked to make decisions on a budget based on forecasted numbers that I'm getting forecasted numbers at 3.5 million, and I'm getting, oh, well, this is incorrect. I
no,
want-
sir, it's a different
I guess-
perspective.
Okay, then what I want's the perspective that's the actual year end. What's the perspective?
That's on page, I'm sorry.
It's on page what? I'm sorry.
It's on page 35 of the preliminary budget, and it's $3,314,000.
Okay, so then what is this perspective?
This is simply a mathematical calculation that is a tool to aid us as we look towards making a full year-end estimate.
It's just a flat, not flat, that's a poor choice of words, but it's a formula-driven
Based on history. It doesn't take into account the future that we have and more knowledge of. It's a stepping stone towards the final estimate.
I had difficulty with it early on, and I still do. I think you just have to take it for what it's worth. We just think factoring in the closure of Walmart is gonna drop that 3.5 down to
That's correct.
3. But the reality is, and they're all forecast projections. I think it'll be somewhere between 3.3 and 3.5. Is that fair to say that?
Yes.
You may be more
To be
biased.
conservative, we have to cut that 3.5 back because these calculations only deal with the past history that has the Kmart in there. But we know in the next closing months of this year that Kmart's not going to be there.
Okay,
So
I see what you're saying. This is based on previous experience. What I'm asking for is one that shows what we actually think it's going to do.
well, you actually think it's going to be 3 million?
A graph, just like.
Sure, we could do that. We can do that, sure.
I mean, if you already have it, I'll.
No, I don't already have it. I'll have to work it up, sir.
No, we'll just go over it then. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Williams?
We got a question for Mr. Elfrink, and we got a statement for Mr. Flynn to give you a little time before you come up here. We're going to ask you when you get up here, in the last 90 days, what do we have that's came that's going to develop more sales tax for us? So you can work on that while I'm asking him. Mr. Elfrink, there now we were talking about hotel motel tax.
Yes, sir.
And how we go about auditing those and making sure that we're getting the proper tax from those people. On the sales tax, how do we audit the retailers to ensure that we're getting what we're supposed to be getting?
About 2 months ago, I brought an agenda item to the council, and we are in fact, I think I'm mailing it off tomorrow. We have finalized the contract with a firm that is going to begin to very scrupulously audit our sales tax retailers on a regular basis. And we've done it haphazardly in the past because we lack the staffing and we lack the expertise internally to do it. It's a pretty significant project.
You think there may be some discrepancies in that?
I'm sure there are. Any community that's surrounded by 3, 4 other communities, and we have 7 or 8 zip codes in this community, I know for a fact there are retailers who honestly make a mistake and report their sales tax to the wrong community. And then there's some that dishonestly make the mistake and don't report it to anyone, or they under-collect and some things like that. So I'm looking forward to some significant improvements due to that contract.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Okay, I'm in line for a motion to accept the monthly financial report for June 2003. Councilmember Hurley?
Well, I move we approve the monthly financial report.
Okay. Councilmember Fowler?
I'll second the motion.
Councilmember Williams?
Second.
Have a motion, a second, to accept the financial report, and that passes by unanimous vote. Capital improvement status report, Mr. Muir.
Good evening. I'll try and make this as briefly and quickly as I'll try and stay with 3 minutes. Or the staff back here is going to give me the hook, I think. Broadway, as you know, we've had another traffic switch in that we're now driving on the north side of Broadway all the way from Beach to Parker. The contractor is concentrating on finishing the north side out. It'll probably be another 30 days before that happens. Lindsay, Revere, and Roxy. That's Reliable Paving is doing the street work on that. Roxy is basically finished. Lindsay is underway, and then that should be complete in August, and Revere should be started right after that, and should be finished by October of '03. As far as the recon projects for '02-03, Mona and Harris will be bid hopefully in September, with the construction to start in December. For the overlay projects, as you know, Haley is finished. Kinman's underway. After that, Thomas and Oak Ridge will be performed in that order. Another overlay project that was just recently awarded to Austin Bridge and Road is all the overlay projects, which the focus is going to be on Haltom Road, which will be starting in the next week or two, doing that overlay from 28th Street to Stanley Keller. In the drainage portion of the Midway project there's no significant improvement to that. The council recently approved a change order that would add a water main underneath that bridge at the city's expense. The city's cost for that project before the change order was only $40,000. The water main will add about 76 to it. But right now the construction has been delayed 3 months. Hopefully it'll be finished sometime in the next 30 to 60 days. Let me jump over to sanitary sewer. The Big Fossil Creek Drainage Basin Project. The council recently approved a change order for about $76,000 that added the portions of Phase 1. This is from the contract that B&H Utilities had that the city terminated with them. Those facets of their project were added to this Phase 2 project performed by Circle C. Project's currently 50% complete and should be finished by December '03. The manhole rehab project is still moving along as scheduled and is about 35% complete and will also be finished by December of '03. In the building projects, the Public Works facility, if you haven't been by there, I encourage you to go by there. It's bricked. It's almost fully enclosed. We're waiting on glass to go up at the front, but it's really taking shape. It's looking very, very good. Mechanical ductwork is started, but basically the thing's going very well. Hopefully we'll be in there sometime in September. Some people think early September. That's between the manager and the public works director. The rec center, that's you recently approved a resolution tonight authorizing some additional funding for that. The project is moving. It's moving slow right now because of the additional work we've had to do with the drilling of the piers and some of the groundwater issues we've had to deal with. We did pour a slab Friday morning. Hopefully that'll get us around the turn, but we're still fiddling with that thing. There's also an issue with the slab that we're working with the engineers on. We're not sure what we're going to do right now. There's different slabs across the project right now. We're going to be floating the floor across it. Some folks seem to think that maybe doing a whole new slab may be better. So that's just an issue we're still looking at. Fire station, if you haven't been by it, the walls for the bays are up. Trusses, we had some long, 85-foot trusses, 82-foot trusses delivered out there and secured with a chain, I think. But the structural steel erection, there's a lot of structural steel coming in there, still slated to be delivered, and it's going to be starting very, very soon. The library project, we have finished basically an RFP, waiting on some land acquisition processes with that. But otherwise, we're ready to go with it. I'd like to finish up with the beautification project on Belknap. I think that was mentioned earlier tonight. Contractor has mobilized, contractor is out there, and the contractor's already got a problem. And he's working with TxDOT on it. He feels that there was some ambiguity in TxDOT specs, and they're working on it, but there's already some issues out there, and we've only been started a couple of weeks. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thanks, Mayor. When are we looking to start the Haltom Road project?
I think they're the first week in August. You mean
How
the
long
overlay?
is that going to take?
You're talking about the overlay, right?
Yeah.
Overlay is going to take,
Not very long. We're just waiting for the contract documents to come back to the contractor.
We looking a week, 2 weeks, a
but
month?
once they mobilize and they start,
About 3 or 4 weeks. Finish
Yeah.
Haltom Road. Quite a bit of curve.
yeah,
Better work.
it's right around the time of school starting.
That's my
The
point.
timing is unfortunate.
That's all.
Councilmember Williams and then Councilmember Fowler.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the issues for the beautification for Belknap? This project is going to go from from Carson Street almost to the beach. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
And the issues that we're running against on there.
Well, the issues they're having problems with is hauling away some concrete on how that's going to be done. Apparently, it's a significant cost to the contractor that apparently the contractor didn't figure into his contract, and he feels that there was some ambiguity in the specifications. TxDOT's dealing with it from their legal aspect. It's a TxDOT contract. It's something they're handling. We're just kind of caught in the middle right now.
Will be a 20% burden on it. Or what is our total cost of that? You may know, or Fran may
No, I'm
know.
sure it's. I think I mentioned it in here. We've got 20% cost sharing in this.
And so if there's a change in the concrete, we'll have 20% cost sharing in the...
That would be the logical assumption. Yeah.
I'm getting sick of the state of Texas making mistakes and us sharing.
Well, that's not to say, I'm not saying they've made a mistake. I'm just saying the contractor feels that it was ambiguous. TxDOT may feel
Concrete
otherwise.
was there when he made the bid.
Well, that's one opinion.
We didn't sneak it in on him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I
thank
understand
you.
that.
Councilmember Fowler, you had your light on a moment ago.
In disregard, Mayor, I'd ask the manager. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions regarding capital improvements? We don't need to take any action on that. We move forward then to Economic Development Status Report. Mr. Kent Flynn, our Economic Development Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Got a lot going on in various stages. The first project that I'd like to report on has actually generated some results already, and that is our first round sale of city-owned properties. We generated $14,253 in that sale of 3 properties. I think the total revenues generated out of those 3 properties was about twice that amount, so we kept half of it. We had to share with the other taxing entities on that. In your report, you have a reference to the Quad Cities DFW, which I reported on in our last monthly status report regarding our trip to the International Council of Shopping Centers annual conference, so I won't go into that again. But we have seen some major retail development occur here along Belknap that I'd like to update you with. We've been working for several months to retain one of the largest or best retailers in town. Although that retailer has been pursued by an adjacent city with aggressive economic development assistance grants. We've been working with this business to keep him, and I'm happy to report tonight not only are we retaining that business, but that business is expanding and taking an essentially vacant building on Belknap and putting it to retail use. That business is Sam's Furniture. Sam's Furniture has now purchased the building at 5050 Belknap. He's basically going to turn that into a mixed-use project, if you will. There are going to be 3 users in that building. Sam's Furniture will occupy the ground floor with warehouse in the back. That warehouse will actually be a point of sale. A lot of the customers that Sam's has actually picks up their merchandise at their, or had been, at their warehouse in North Richland Hills on Grapevine Highway. He will move that facility to 5050 Belknap, so that portion of the building will generate sales tax. It's projected about $3,000 a month in sales tax will be generated from that use. Then also 21st Century's Technologies, which is or has been the current occupant of that building, albeit a reduced occupancy because they've been basically losing ground. They will continue to rent space from Herb Whitesblatt, the owner of the building now, who is the owner of Sam's Furniture. And then there is a 6,000 square foot mezzanine that will be put to use with a third user, which I can't really discuss tonight, but it will be an office use. So, and we do need the office space. I get requests all the time from people that are looking for small amounts of office space. And that's something Herb and I have been talking about for months. So I'm glad that they have purchased the building. And Sam's Furniture is kind of one of the anchors along Belknap, which really we did not want to lose, and I'm glad to see him expand and invest that much more in the Belknap corridor. In addition to encouraging the adaptive reuse of 5050 Belknap, we've also been working with 6 different separate investors that all have plans for either a restaurant or small shopping center or combination of the two to build on Belknap Street. So these investments represent quite a significant turn, I would say, of events towards redevelopment, the redevelopment trend of Belknap. More activity than certainly I've seen in the 3 years combined that I've been here. So I'm pretty enthusiastic about Belknap's future and this redevelopment trend. Another positive trend is business starts in Haltom City. For the second quarter in a row, the second quarter of 2003 now, we issued 52 commercial building permits. That trend is up 58% over the first couple of months of the same time period from the year prior. But more telling than that even is the fact that Haltom City issued more commercial COs for this last quarter than all the cities in the Quad Cities combined besides us. That is North Richland Hills, and Watauga. Their joint issuance of commercial business starts was 40 for that same quarter, whereas we had 52. It's just another indication of kind of one of our strengths, and that is that we have a very diversified commercial base with lots of small businesses. Small businesses are our backbone, and they continue to come. They continue to come to Haltom City and locate and take advantage of the many opportunities we have along the dozen commercial corridors that we have. Some of the highlights of some of these new businesses include S&T Food Mart has reopened the Chevron service station at Haltom Road and 820. They're also currently in negotiations with a fast food restaurant to take over the restaurant portion of the building, which has been closed also. So that looks like it's going to come back to life. Life Care Convalescent Center, of course, we all attended their grand opening of their $2.7 million renovation of that facility on Belknap. That opened during the last quarter. We have a new Dollar General store that opened on 28th Street. And 3 new restaurants are in the works. Bangkok Cuisine on Denton Highway. Popeyes, of course, has opened on Beach Street. And Enzo's Pizza, Pasta, and Subs is working to open up on 377. Ongoing prospects that we're working on. During this last quarter, we've helped 3 businesses relocate into vacant structures in Haltom City. 2 of those were Haltom City businesses expanding that took over currently vacant buildings. And one of them is a new business, new to the Dallas-Fort Worth area that's moving here and currently looking at a vacant building that we're helping them with. Also, the Economic Development Corporation offers an economic development assistance grant. We have 7 prospects that we're working with on those kinds of grants. These would result in 2 washaterias, 1 car wash, one mixed-use furniture store, that is the Sam's Furniture, one office expansion on Airport Freeway, and 2 office warehouse projects. Just to give you an update on the Winn-Dixie and Kmart situation, when I was at the International Council of Shopping Centers conference, we did make some headway on the Winn-Dixie building, as I reported last month, in that I met with the Chicago broker that's actually handling all the Winn-Dixie properties, and we figured out how a buyout could occur of the Winn-Dixie lease. I relayed that news to a broker that I've been working with on that property when I got back, and he has since confirmed that he has an investor looking at buying that property. It may take several months for him to work through the details, but there is an investor working on that. Also, the Kmart, we showed that at the International Council of Shopping Centers convention. I worked with the real estate representative that represents the owner of that entire property, that is the Kmart Kroger Shopping Center. And we showed that at ICSC. A couple of things that have happened recently with regard to that property is, one, Kmart has been through the bankruptcy procedures now, and that is no longer clouding the potential sale of the property. The current owners are California owners that own the shopping center, and they do have the property up for sale now. So Kmart's bankruptcy situation no longer prohibits that sale. I have news of at least one investment group that is looking at buying the building, the whole shopping center. One group out of Denver that I know of that I've talked with that is looking at buying it. And I have even better news that I think is just around the corner with regard to the re-tenanting of the Kmart building. There are 2 larger retailers that are currently looking at occupying that building. So it's looking more positive than I even anticipated in respect to the Kmart, because there's very few users out there that I thought could really use that building. And it looks like we may have 2. With regard to some other ongoing activities, transportation, of course, being one of the most important aspects of our economic wealth in Haltom City. Our transportation assets has continued to improve, what with the recent opening of Carson and the Haltom Beach frontage road. So we have 2 projects down, 2 to go. The Belknap beautification project is underway, and of course Broadway is over halfway complete. So these do nothing more than add to our balance sheet with regard to economic development. To preserve our opportunities as far as future economic development with respect to Interstate 820, that's an ongoing, never-ending vigil that I have to constantly maintain to preserve the maximum amount of economic development opportunities there. About a year ago, TxDOT, or not TxDOT, their bosses actually, the Texas Transportation Commission, proposed doing away with frontage roads in Texas, and that met with, of course, a resounding thud as regard to its reception throughout the communities in Texas. They pulled that proposal back only to suggest that the real issue was not frontage roads, but access management. That is, what access you're going to have on those frontage roads, and how do we better manage that access so that it doesn't add to the congestion. So I've been attending meetings religiously to continue to keep the watch to make sure that we don't lose our access along the frontage roads that we've already gotten built, and that will be built with the 820 widening project, because 820, of course, will be 5 lanes in each direction, with 3-lane frontage roads on either side, all the way through Haltom City on both sides of 820. Recently, over the last couple of months, the North Central Texas Council of Governments has been coordinating meetings to review proposals that TxDOT is putting forth for a new access management manual that TxDOT is putting together. That manual included a proposal that met pretty favorably with everybody in attendance, and that was the proposal to take TxDOT out of the permitting process altogether with regard to permitting frontage road access. They suggested that if cities adopted their own access management policies, that they would turn over that responsibility to cities. I guess it was last Tuesday, within the last week, I went to a public hearing in Irving that the Texas Transportation Commission was holding on this very subject. And they did confirm, the commissioners did confirm that that is their proposal. To reinforce that and to make sure that Texas Transportation Commission keeps their word, there was a bill passed in the last legislative session that mandated that TxDOT's rules with regard to access management could not supersede local government's rules. There's still some fine-tuning of that, some issues with regard to median cuts, whether that is included or not to be included in the term access management. So it will require my constant attendance of these meetings and monitoring of the situation to be sure that we don't lose out there. But bottom line is, I'm certainly going to recommend that this city adopt our own access management policy in the coming months. I've had discussions with the city engineer regarding this and the city manager, and I believe that that is the route that we need to take to ensure our future best course with regard to development along 820. Other ongoing activities, of course, we continue to work with seeking grants through the Highway Department. There's the T21 call for projects. There is a call for projects coming up, so I've been attending those meetings. I attend the RTC, Regional Transit Commission, and Surface Transportation Technical Committee meetings in pursuit of those grant opportunities. There is also a railroad crossing grant program that we're pursuing, and the status on that is we've learned that we have a dozen railroad crossings, that is with streets here in Haltom City, that are included now in the list of projects that will be considered. However, they'll be competing against all the other cities, as all these grants are very competitive. There's over 400 of these crossings that we'll be competing with in order to try to obtain funding. We may be lucky enough to get one. Additional upcoming activities, we have the second sale of the Benson property, that is the property at 4118 Belknap, that we're going to be processing August 5th on the courthouse steps. We have a good half dozen investors that are very interested in that property. And then we have the second round sale of non-tax foreclosure properties that we'll be discussing in executive session that can also generate additional revenues.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. We had 3 new businesses open while you did that.
Well, you know, I do what I can.
First of all, I get some questions throughout the weeks. They always ask me, what does Kent Flynn do, the Economic Development Director? And I appreciate the city manager and the mayor having this put on there where we can get a report from him from time to time. Sounds like he's been a very busy man. I would like to make one correction. The Chevron is on Denton Highway as opposed to Haltom Road.
Did I say Haltom Road? I'm sorry.
Yeah, they moved it 1 block to the east. On these 52, and I'm very glad that we've got 52 and we got more than all the Quad Cities together in COs that are opening. Of those 52 that opened, how many do you think are sales tax bearing businesses?
Okay, since you gave me a few minutes to prepare, and I didn't have much with me, but I will run down a list of things that I think that are going to affect sales tax. The 3 new restaurants that I mentioned, of course, will. That's the Bangkok Cuisine, the Popeyes, and the Enzo's Pizza, Pasta, and Subs. The Dollar General store obviously will. S&T Food Mart, the Chevron, it will. Bargain Auto Glass just added on, I think, a $45,000 addition to their facility, so that should generate more sales tax. We have 12,000 square feet of shopping center under construction on Belknap, adjacent to the Asian market, that will generate sales tax. And then the Sam's Furniture, that's 36,000, or I don't know exactly what the square footage, but there's projected $3,000 a month in sales tax that'll be generated there. You know, those are just the ones that have happened in the very recent past. One thing I would also say is that you know, there's probably 24 or more new businesses that have come online in the last year or two that we didn't have 3 years ago that are generating sales tax. And although the Kmart hurts, there's no doubt that the Kmart hurts. We have a lot of new businesses that we didn't have 2-3 years ago. When I got here, the year prior that I got here, the largest commercial building permit was the Sea Turtle Car Wash up on Western Center, and that was about it. So we have seen a lot of new retail development that continues to come, even though it's in small bits and pieces.
We got quite a few fast foods and the driving gas stations, QTs and stuff like that.
Right. And there's just a lot of pad sales and that kind of small businesses.
We talk about what the impact is on the large box store Kmart moving out, but I think with all these stores coming in, I think that this is going to make a big dent in it.
Yeah, I think so.
Of course, if you get the Kmart store marketed and get someone back in there that's a retailer.
Certainly that'll help. And these two new users really make me pretty encouraged that we'll actually see something there instead of just an empty box forever. Across the board, sales tax are down everywhere, and we're suffering from that, no doubt. But we are thankful that we've got all these small businesses coming up and taking up the slack.
I appreciate your report, and if anybody out there via TV or it's going to listen to this, your phone number is area code
817-222-7766.
You sneezed, but let's get this together.
Thanks, James.
Are you and James working together?
Yeah.
222.
Time that just right. 7766.
7766.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Pliska.
One thing I want to add to this, most of you probably read in the Northeast newspaper this past Sunday a terrific article, a major feature on the good things happening in Haltom City in the area of economic development. And all of this is very important when we're in an economic downturn. So your report tonight, along with that article and the other good things that are happening, indicate Haltom City is moving forward.
Yes, I think we are.
We've taken a few licks. We are moving forward. So thank you for your report. And also the monthly financial report and the capital improvement status report. All of that's very important in conveying information to our citizens regarding the good things going on in Haltom City. We move now to item number 11, resignation of board members. Councilmember Fowler, I believe you have a resignation.
Yes, sir. I'm going to have to replace Mary Beth Shipka from the Beautification Board.
Okay, we're asking for ratification of this resignation. If you'll cast your vote, I'll display it, and that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 12 is appointment and reappointment of boards and commissions. Do we have any of those tonight? Okay, there being none. Item number 13, attendance requirement, is a moot issue. The council will move into executive session at this time pursuant to section 551.071 and .072. We'll reconvene in open session to take action on any item deemed necessary as a result of executive session.